Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Sack. I'm the Associate Dean for Alumni Relations and Development at the Kellogg School of Management. I want to welcome you to this webinar this morning, the C-Suite Roundtable, Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology. It's my pleasure to introduce Suresh Krishna, who will serve as the moderator of today's conversation. Suresh is president and CEO and a member of the board of the Northern Tool and Equipment, a leading retailer and manufacturer of tools and equipment for the trades and DIY community. Krishna joined Northern Tool in April 2020 after 5 years as a member of the board. Krishna has a lot of experience, a lot of different corporations that he can talk about himself if he'd like. But has been a great experience and is also a member of the Global Advisory Board of the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Suresh holds an MBA from Kellogg School of Management and a BS in Mechanical Engineering from the National Institute of Technology in India. It's my pleasure to pass it off to Suresh.
Thank you, Dave. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have all of you. And I'm thrilled that we are able to do this at Kellogg and bring to you a feature where we have an esteemed set of alumni who serve in the industrial manufacturing sector, which for most of you, you would know is over 20% of our GDP is related to manufacturing and industrial products. Everything around us that we look around is made somewhere in a factory. And a lot of the industrial products have been the foundation for what built this country. We have a terrific set of alumni who are from Kellogg, who are leading executives in several companies. And I'm really thrilled with the alumni who are joining me today on this panel. We've done this panel 2 years ago and came back last year as well. And so this looks like it's becoming more of a routine thing for us. And so hopefully after today and today's experience, we'll be able to come back again and do it again next year. I'm really thrilled to welcome and introduce all three panelists. First is Sarah Lauber. Sarah is Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at Milwaukee-based Douglas Dynamics. They're a premier manufacturer and upfitter of work truck attachments and equipment. And prior to joining Douglas Dynamics in 2017, Sarah has held financial leadership positions in several public companies. She now serves on the board of Timken, another industrial company, and has started her career in KPMG in accounting. Sarah has a degree from California State University and an MBA from us. Okay, it looks like we lost technology, so it's appropriate that we are talking about manufacturing today, which doesn't fail. I'm just kidding. So welcome back. Sorry, we went off air briefly. I was introducing Sonita Lanto. Sonita is an accomplished independent director with expertise in innovation, technology-enabled transformations, and sustainability. She currently serves on the boards of Sunrun and TrueBlue and is an advisor to Sway Ventures, a Silicon Valley VC. Prior to her board service, Sonita spent time in Fortune 100 companies like HP and Siemens and PG&E, and also in entrepreneurial ventures in VC-backed Silicon Valley companies. Sonita has been recognized by the White House, the U.S. State Department, inducted into the Asian American Hall of Fame and Women in Manufacturing Hall of Fame. Sonita has a master's degree from MIT, and MBA from Kellogg Northwestern. Happy to introduce Scott Somerville. Scott is president and CEO of Mitsubishi Electric Automation, and he has had 30 years of experience in industrial automation industry, working on every kind of automation solutions possible, whether it's CNCs, robots, PLCs, everything that is industrial automation is something that Scott's touched. Through his career, he has worked in Asia, spent 10 years in China, Hong Kong. He's spent time working in companies like Rockwell and Omron. So good experience working globally, and is a great addition to this panel who can provide a global perspective for how manufacturing is a very global business. So really thrilled to have all of you. So we will spend time today talking about topics in engineering, in technology, in automation, AI, and we'd love to bring out the expertise of this great panel that we've assembled today. We're going to start with some specific questions for each of the panelists, and then we'll have some questions where we'll open it up for all the panelists to participate. So I want to start with Sarah. First, you have, as a CFO of a public company, you have access to a large amount of data, whether it's manufacturing, supply chain, customer sales. How do you zero in on metrics that are most impactful for decision making?
It's a great question, and it's very true. You get a lot of data. So I would say to start out that it's not the data that you hone in on, it's the data that you can kind of ignore. So it's important to understand what the drivers are for your business, what may be immaterial, because we tend to get copied on everything, and it's hard to weed through sometimes. So what I do hone in on, of course, from a financial standpoint, are financial metrics. So I'm very focused on margins and the P&L and the key drivers that drive that particular business. We want to see around corners, and the drivers are critical.
That's great. Thank you for providing that insight. Sunita, I'll turn to you. I mean, you've been involved with leading organizations that are in climate and cybersecurity, digital transformation. These are all difficult, cutting-edge topics. How do you see these kinds of companies stay on the cutting edge through building a learning culture?
That's a great question, Suresh. I think while building a learning culture is important, I actually would like to answer your question from a much more holistic perspective. And so I think when you take a step back, there's really no one size fits all with regards to how different companies approach each of these subjects, from climate or technology transformations. It will depend on the particular company's industry, challenges and opportunities, materiality. And also, I would argue that many companies are at different stages of maturity with regards to where they are on each of these subjects. And, some companies have just started, others probably have started some time ago, still others probably are way more advanced. I would argue, I think, in terms of climate or sustainability, most companies probably start from risk mitigation, compliance perspective, but those who are the most advanced actually are able to integrate it fully into their business strategy. So I think there are a few guiding principles, I would say, that at least now that I'm on the board side, that I find really helpful in guiding companies in these areas, is that first, very important for companies to integrate, be it climate or technology transformation, into the overall company's business strategy, core values and culture for long-term value creation. Second, I think when it comes to sustainability, what Sarah mentioned, just like in finance, I think materiality is very important. So I think people need to do materiality assessment to truly understand which sustainability factors are actually the most material for their companies. And then last but not least, once you understand materiality, you focus on those areas and you have programs ensuring that your programs have enough budgets, resources, expertise, and, long-term commitment.
That's great. Thank you for providing that insight for us. Scott, I'll turn to you. Mitsubishi Electric is a global giant, a leader in automation. So as you think about the next phase beyond just automation, everybody talks about AI, and what are the potential uses of AI in your field, and how do you think about that?
Sure. Thanks, Suresh. AI has been in manufacturing now for decades. And I think the first exposure I had to AI, although we didn't call it AI at the time, was predictive analytics, and specifically around maintenance, predictive maintenance for, rotating components like motors and gears and things like that. So it typically was external solutions. But now what we find is that predictive analytics are being embedded in automation products. So customers don't have to, they can deploy that technology without having to buy accessories and ancillary systems and so on. But the future of AI is certainly much more than that. I'm really excited about the ability to do automated programming of PLCs and other devices. I think the more high-level, sophisticated programming will have to continue to be done by humans, but I think there's so much basic programming that could be done and automated through AI. I got another example about how to optimize manufacture with AI. This is in the semiconductor space, actually power semiconductors. And this company had a lot of fallout. They were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars of IGBTs because of, they didn't know what it was caused by. And after comparing a lot of data sets, they saw that when the dwell times were higher, they were losing product. Now, AI could have fixed that immediately, really on the fly, and actually maybe a feedback to adjust the manufacturing process. So there really didn't have to be human intervention or analysis at all. So the promise for AI is huge in this field, but we move a little slower because we want to make sure the products that get to consumers are high quality, and that's job one.
That's great.
Makes sense.
Do anybody was on the leading edge on this, Scott, or?
Well, all the major automation companies are looking at it. We've developed a software. It's kind of a data science. It's kind of like having a data scientist next to you, but in software. We call it My Lab. But I think many automation companies are looking at this, but the uptake's going to be a little slower because manufacturers want to make sure that they can still output the quality they're looking for, and they get the ROI and so on.
That's great. Staying on the AI theme, Sarah, as a manufacturer, what kind of AI development and predictive algorithms do you think manufacturing companies, particularly like yours, would look for?
I'm gonna give you two answers. I'm gonna first start out talking a bit about our company, Douglas Dynamics, and where we're at. From a manufacturing standpoint, I would say as a small cap, we are just embarking on looking at things. So the ideas are plentiful, but we've not quite started any test cases. During hyperinflation, there was a lot of discussion on predicting steel prices. I can't say that we made a lot of inroads on that. And I can't say that you could really predict just based on the steel industry. But when I first read the question, though, this is a bit of a joke. Douglas, the largest part of our business is driven by snowfall. And we have no idea how to predict it. So I would love to see AI try to start to solve maybe what snowfall. Yes. That would be very valuable to our company.
That's great. I think there's definitely an application for snow, and as it is for tornadoes and other storms, and disasters that we have.
Right.
That's great. Thank you for that. I'll switch gears and come back to you, Sunita, and talk a little bit about infrastructure and investments. There's big focus for reshoring in America right now. The CHIPS Act, and infrastructure investments. How do you see, as a board member advising companies in the industrial space, how do you see all of that and our industrial policy for bringing back manufacturing?
Yeah, I would say based on kind of the industries that I've been involved in, primarily it is industrial, but more focused on energy infrastructure. Government policies, both at the federal and also state and even local levels, actually play a very pivotal role. And in terms of the specific regulations that are very significant for the renewable energy industries, actually the Inflation Reduction Act or the IRA. Even though the name says Inflation Reduction Act, when you really look closely at it, it is really about reducing the federal government deficit. It's about reducing prescription drug prices. And in a very big way, it's actually about investing in domestic clean energy investment, manufacturing, and production. And so the IRA, according to the Department of Energy, I think they said this was actually the largest investment America has ever made in terms of enabling domestic clean energy production and manufacturing. There's a study I read not too long ago that said in the next decade, with the IRA, there will be 70% more clean energy being produced in America and being deployed compared to what would otherwise be possible without an IRA. And so as you guys can see, it's a very significant policy.
If I could just
Yeah, please.
add on to that.
Please.
I've had a long career, and this is the most impact that I've seen from government legislation in my entire career. The expansion of semiconductor manufacturing, bringing that back to the US, Intel and TI and Samsung and so on. To your point, Sunita, about clean energy, we're seeing a real uptick in renewable energy, biogas, and so on. And, also water treatment activities like that, and HVAC. In January of this year, companies like Lennox and Trane and so on were required to improve their energy efficiency by 15%. And of course, you got to do that through variable speed technology and AI potentially as well. So yeah, it's been a huge impact.
Totally.
As you talk about these new sectors in manufacturing, I can't but think about workforce and what's happening with skills and shortages that we have today. Scott, anything you'd like to add from your standpoint on how companies like Mitsubishi are figuring out to get the right workforce into the manufacturing sector?
It's a huge challenge, particularly in technical disciplines. The college enrollment is down, period, but even more so in engineering and technical fields. And so, and it's just going to get worse with the birth rate in the US and globally. Japan is even has bigger problems. Our strategy is to expand the talent pool where we are drawing talent from. And I think, quite frankly, in our industry, we need more women in certainly coming up through the management ranks and so on. There's a lot of opportunity. It's a great career field. But another area is people with disabilities. The autism rate in this country is huge, 1 in like 42 births right now. And many of these people are very high functioning and can do great work. And they're extremely focused. So things like QA and software development are potential opportunities. We need to do more in that area. So that's really what we're looking at, expanding that pool.
That's great. And it's good to see companies like you taking the lead on that and bringing more people into this kind of workforce. I have a couple of questions that I thought we could raise the level up a little bit and look at it from a board member perspective. I'm happy for either Sunita or Sarah, either of you to chime in. Scott, you could do that too. When we look at companies, there are executives who are making some decisions, and then board gets involved in some decisions. So how do you, as board members, stay aligned with how the industry executives are thinking about implementing digitization, AI, automation, sustainability, and those kinds of topics?
I'll start, and I'm going to come at it from both, being on the management team and then also being on a board. But it's a fine balance to navigate through, to understand much of what you were speaking to earlier is where is it material and where do we need to, align that with the company strategy. And I find from a management perspective, aligning the compliance side and everything that's required to what's important to us and making it a competitive advantage.
Right.
And then to selling it to our shareholders who are saying, where's the ROI on some of these things? It's a fine balance that you have to navigate through. And I think as a board member, you need to understand all of the stakeholders so that you can bring it all together to help make the right decisions and determine, where the focus should be. And there's a lot of places you can focus. So narrowing the field.
Totally. I totally support that because I think as a board, it's funny because I was actually already serving on my 2 public boards when I was still a sitting executive. And, the tension between management and board, very, very delicate there. But I think I agree with what Sarah said. I think materiality, helping management to frame it as a way to manage material risk and opportunities to create long-term value. And if you're a US-based company, the focus of US fiduciary, at least up to now, is to shareholders. So your fiduciary is actually to the corporation and to the best interest of shareholders, while taking into consideration other stakeholders' interests, but your primary focus is the shareholders. I would like to add though, Sarah, as I've mentioned previously, companies are at different stages, right? But I see that some of the companies who are the most advanced, they are actually willing to quantify the business benefits from some of these activities, be it sustainability or digital transformation. Let's use HP, the last company I was serving as an executive at. We actually view sustainability as part of our competitive advantage. And actually during my last year there, we were able to quantify that we had won an additional $3.5 billion in commercial RFPs, partly because we had better sustainability programs compared to some of our competitors. So I think the more companies can quantify, be it cost efficiencies or more revenues, the better I think it will be to sell to shareholders.
No, I agree. I'm just going to add a little bit from a management perspective. The embarking upon some of these things and being the CFO where I'm saying, okay, I want to see the return. What are we going to get from this? And people are sitting there saying, I don't even know how to quantify what this is going to do, but I know we need to do it either to stay in the game or to leap ahead. And so the advice I was given was to get benchmarking quantification techniques so that you can at least have something to rely on and move forward. And that's been the approach we've had to take because we just don't even know how to start to quantify it.
Totally. And I just want to mention one more thing. I think when we talk about sustainability, we have the tendency to think about, it's climate or the environment. But actually sustainability can also be used to help attract and retain new employees, especially the younger generations. I think Deloitte said they did a survey and about 35% of millennials said that they would leave a job for another company that has better sustainability programs.
Sunita, you made a fantastic point, and that is that companies need to look at sustainability as an opportunity, not as a burden. I think many see, and unfortunately in the US, we're still shaking out the standards and the regulations and so on. It'll happen. I mean, Europe and Asia are certainly ahead of us. But I think particularly from the C-suite, we need to all really get our teams excited about sustainability. And I know that's certainly an important part of what we're doing at Mitsubishi.
That's a great point, Scott. I mean, in many ways, all of you, what you're saying is it's not an or, it's an and. And sustainability should become part of how we do business, not an extra or a choice that we make that's kind of woven into what we do. As we think about sustainability, I cannot but think about what happened through COVID for supply chains. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time trying to explore how it panned out for each of you in your businesses that you're associated with.
Or still panning out.
Or still panning out, right? So, give me a sense of, and each of you could jump in and whenever you feel comfortable, but how did supply chain disruptions affect your company? Yeah.
For us, it was a very large impact, and it still is. So if you look at our earnings releases, we still talk about chassis availability. So our segment that upfits work trucks, you have to have a chassis in order to have a truck. So
help explain the business a little bit. So our audience can, the point you're making, people would think 2 years after the pandemic, how is it still, right? So
I remember when I joined, I didn't know what upfit was. So upfit is a verb, which is basically taking a truck chassis, which is just the cab and the four wheels. And we put everything on it to build any type of truck that is used for work. So think of plumbers' trucks, cranes, etc. And we're reliant on the OEMs. And we have all classes of trucks. So anywhere from class 3, which is, a larger Ford F-250, I'm probably going to get that wrong, up to class 7 and 8, which are the large on the road highway trucks. Yeah. So the COVID impact was just getting all of the OEMs getting their supplies, but then the chip shortage occurred. And I would say, just navigating through that, the learning for Douglas is when you think of your strategy and where you're relying on other suppliers, understanding what their strategy is. So we because the work trucks that we build are lower margin for the OEMs, they're smart. They're switching their mix, which certainly prolongs for us the ability to get back. So we are still operating with over a year's worth of backlog, and we are, just waiting for the chassis to free up more. That has caused us to focus on growth outside of the chassis channel, as we would call it. And I think from my perspective, it was probably a blind spot because you just figure if you need a chassis, you can get a chassis. But that just hasn't been the case.
You see light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak?
We do. It's definitely improving. The lead times are getting shorter, but there's still many months. They're not, it's not a month. It's a long time.
Well, there was a lot of blind spots out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Not just at your company. In terms of what we did to combat the problem, I call it guerrilla supply chain. It was basically hand-to-hand combat. I'd like to say we had this sophisticated AI-driven, supply chain model, but no, it was, the one thing I think we did maybe a little better than some of our competitors was communicate.
Okay.
Whether it was good news or bad news, and even myself, I became the chief expediting officer, CEO, but CEO. And I was on the phone with our major customers, with their CEOs, talking them off the ledge and so on. And they appreciated the communication. Unfortunately, fatigue set in after a year.
Yeah.
And we lost a few customers, but we also gained some from competitors that had the same problem. Going forward, I think, we've talked about AI earlier. I think there's an opportunity for AI in the supply chain space to do better predictive forecasting, demand management, and so on, taking in all these parameters from the market, from competition, all the earnings reports you see and so on, what is really happening. So I'm encouraging, my company to explore that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
So anything from your side?
Sure. I think for me, it's more like lessons learned, probably. So for Sunrun, one of my boards, who is a solar and battery company, I think we learned we should not, depend on only specific geographies to get some of our supply. And so we started diversifying. So a lot of solar panels come from China, but, we had to diversify to other countries in Southeast Asia, and then also some domestic content here from the US. And from a battery perspective, even though we do have a lot of battery suppliers, there is a battery shortage. And I think we decided to actually enter into a joint venture with SK, the South Korean conglomerate, to actually invest in a domestic battery manufacturer called Lunar Energy. And I just want to make a comment, observations that I've kind of seen, based both on the pandemic, but also on increasing geopolitical tension that, we all know are happening. I think if in the past companies might be optimizing their supply chain for cost, I think these days people are realizing, especially if you're in mission critical industries, that, your supply chain needs to also be optimized for resiliency. And so I think a lot of people, as you mentioned previously, Suresh, before we started this panel, that, a lot of companies are actually rethinking their supply chain to optimize not just for cost, but also for resiliency.
That's a great point to make, Sanita. Any thoughts from either of you? Are you thinking about reshoring? I mean, you're based here, of course, and you'll have a global manufacturing footprint and supply base all around the world. Is there focus on trying to get something
Yeah,
closer?
I would say we're reducing our dependency on China.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess fortunate for us, a lot of manufacturing is still done in Japan.
Mhm.
And the relationship between Japan and the US is like
Mhm.
fantastic, right? One of the best partners that the US has.
Mhm.
So we didn't have a terrific shock in that regard, but we are still trying to reduce dependence on China. We are looking at Mexico more as an opportunity. On the flip side, with reshoring in terms of our customers, it's really incredible the number of manufacturing jobs, getting back to the manufacturing topic, that have increased or been announced over the last couple of years, really due to reshoring. And this data is all available on the internet in terms of, because there's a reshoring initiative that's tracking all this, but it's really, it's dramatic. And all this is going to not only increase the need for workers, but also the need for automation, the need for skilled labor management, again, getting back to the labor issue and opportunity.
Sarah?
Similar, I would say that we're a North American based company, and the one area that we had to focus on during COVID was moving some of our supply out of China. So we found alternate supplies, and it's a longer process though. It's not easy to find the quality that we've enjoyed. So we're well on our way, but not completely risk averse at this point.
And from a customer standpoint, and Sunita made the point about, most companies went to Asia for lower cost. Now with reshoring happening, are you able to pass on these costs to your customers when the cost goes up because you're focused more on resiliency and suppliers nearby?
I'm gonna let you answer that one, because we don't have a lot of where I'm at today. We don't have a lot of that going on.
Yeah. We have, I think, but I think you need to take a strategic approach to price management. We've actually implemented 80/20 when we look at pricing and customers and products. So, the 4-quadrant model and so on. And we've tried to really strategically apply our price increases. And then we measure price realization, how much we're getting. It's really incredible the amount of profit and sales improvement we've gotten specifically from those price increases. It's a natural part of business. It's something that companies really have to look at on a constant basis, certainly year over year. But we've really made it more scientific over the last few years.
And your businesses are exposed a little more to consumers.
Yes, it is actually consumer battery.
Right.
It's a solar and battery as a service. So we sell to residential customers, actually. So I would say in terms of pricing, I think in terms of just materials, actually, it has consistently gone down. But what really affects us is interest rates, because a lot of our financing, in order to enable the subscription model for solar and battery, we do have to raise a lot of financing upfront through structured finance, asset-backed securities, of course, recourse and non-recourse debt. And so in terms of pricing, actually, supply chain is less of a factor for us, but more interest rates.
There's kind of a tale of two types of customers, and it's a great point, Sunita. I think the interest rate impact has been obviously more pronounced on small and medium-sized companies. One of our major customers builds machine tools, and they sell to job shops, and they also sell to Lockheed and John Deere and so on. Those customers are doing great. They're buying machine tools because the demand is there, and they can pay for it and so on. But the smaller job shops are using existing equipment, not doing upgrades and so on. So it's really a tale of two demographics, if you will.
Right.
I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about digital commerce. It's a topic that touches everybody, probably less the B2B businesses and more the B2C customers. But love your perspective on, what is the impact e-commerce can have on your type of businesses?
Well, we have started our journey probably 2 years ago. Maybe longer for our snow and ice division. And it's mission critical that we get this deployed. I wouldn't say we're lagging for the industry, but it is just critical from the standpoint of being able to supply and get the right data. It is probably for the leading companies, we're maybe experiencing some of the same, which is getting the buy-in from, the whole stream of individuals and businesses that are involved in it, because they don't necessarily feel the void. They're not thinking, our dealers are not thinking they want to order something like they do on Amazon, but they will someday, and they're going to appreciate the ease of doing so, while we appreciate the data that it feeds back to us on inventory and sell-through and all of that. So it has been a journey for us. This is one of the areas where I was saying it was hard to quantify and make the investment to really understand how it was going to help, but we've taken the leap of faith, and I'm confident that it's going to be a game changer for us.
Do you think it's a way to reach directly to end customers who will ultimately be buying some of the equipment?
It does for us, because right now our warranty process is extremely cumbersome, and this will help the data flow early so that we have all the data we need for warranty claims down the road, versus them trying to, navigate and find all of it. So I do think it's going to help the end customer.
Yeah, great. Scott, anything from your standpoint?
We're behind, in e-commerce and so on. We did a few years ago develop a web store, and but we have a big part of our business goes through the channel distributors. So we have to be careful with, transacting business direct with the end user, because if we do that, it's a major strategic change in our go-to-market strategy. So, we want to include the partner, et cetera. So it makes it a little bit more challenging in that regard. But the web store is important to us, and we're going to continue to drive that. We do have a partner we work with that we've encouraged our distributors to work with to develop an e-commerce model. So our strategy has been really help our distributor partners develop their own e-commerce model, and they can use it for our products and other products as well. Typically with our partners, we are the only source for the products we make. So.
Are you thinking of using this technology, which may be available potentially for end customers, but could it also be to use for educating your current channel partners?
You mean the
pushing content through e-commerce kind of medium?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
Ours is more like a portal for our dealerships that ultimately gather the data and make it easier. We've also embarked on e-commerce, but the same channel conflict. I find that to be like the number one reason why many industrial companies like ours are soft pedaling that approach.
Yeah.
But somebody's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So if
I could make a quick comment to the students paying attention, and I guess we'll talk to more later on. You don't necessarily have this so much in consumer, B2C. It's somewhat of a monolithic. I mean, you can divide consumers by demographics and stuff like that. But to your point, Sarah, in the industrial world, you have a very complicated go-to-market. Typically, you have OEMs, you have system integrators, you have distributor channel partners. And so that whole channel strategy area is a huge career for people.
Oh.
And a huge opportunity in my mind. We need people that really can think strategically about go-to-market and channel and so on.
Do you worry, and I'd love to come to Sunita, because you have exposure to the consumer side from an industrial standpoint, but staying on the complexity of the channel, and you think about what Amazon did 20 years ago to what was a complex channel and continues to do. Do you worry that somebody is going to come out there and figure it out for disintermediating the industrial channels?
I think it is possible, definitely. But again, it depends on the go-to-market model. And I think the disruptor most likely will be a brand new company, because I think when you're a legacy, it's impossible. It's just impossible, I think, for legacy companies to completely change, overnight what they're doing. However, a brand new disruptor that can see something in a very new paradigm, it is totally possible. I can give you an example. So when I was still with HP 3D printing business, our first go-to-market motion was to sell our 3D printing solutions to be used by other companies. However, we started seeing some good 3D printing applications are customized products, So one was something like a dental aligner. And when you really think about Invisalign actually disrupted the orthodontics market. So in the old days, people would have to go to their orthodontics, get the measurement, blah, blah, blah. Invisalign disrupted that. So that inspired us at HP. We're like, which other areas can we disrupt with a new business model? And it turned out orthotics. So believe it or not, actually, we launched a new business under a completely different brand, because I convinced them no one would associate HP with orthotics. So we launched a new business called Arise. And that actually enabled people with feet problems, but not severe, to be able to scan their foot data, upload it, and then we will make the orthotics for you and ship it directly to you in a few days. So that is disrupting like the current orthotics market, which you have to go to a doctor, get your feet measured, get the implant. It's a new way of doing business. But what I'm saying here is usually the new paradigm is only possible when you're new, but it's really hard for incumbent to see a new paradigm.
So she's saying we are.
No. It's not. You're not doomed. But
Somebody's going to.
But it is hard because my career has also been helping legacy companies start new things.
Right.
And it's really hard. It's extremely hard.
You're so right, though.
Yes.
You are so right. I couldn't agree more. Because you have this big ship and you're trying to create entrepreneurialism within this big machine that's just going forward. Right. So it is challenging. And I think every company faces this challenge.
Yes.
CEOs want to create innovation within their organizations, and we could talk about psychological safety and all that kind of stuff. But there is this inertia you're dealing with.
Right.
But some companies have set up, and you're based in the Valley. So some companies, industrial companies, have set up offices in the Valley, either to tap into new technology or to invest in some companies which have new technology. How's that working overall? Do you think, John Deere acquired some companies for spraying from a drone and those kinds of things that come out of these kinds of associations, or are there long shots?
I would say it's mixed. It's mixed, and the approaches are different too. I've seen increasingly when legacy companies invest or buy new companies, they usually let the new companies be for many, many, many years, because the worry is like if you integrate it too quickly into the mothership, then the mothership. By the way, there's nothing wrong with the mothership. The mothership is actually very good with process efficiencies, with managing scale, very good. Right. But then if you integrate them too early, then you really lose that kind of like innovative edge. So I think that's one way companies can structure innovation, is actually to incubate it outside of the mothership.
Yeah. We actually have a huge R&D component to the overall corporation. We, Mitsubishi Electric Research Labs, the North American arm is in Boston, near MIT and Cambridge. And we, the factory automation division, we have our own research and development group, but they're more on the development and less on the research. And they're working with a lot of startups. They've done these reverse pitches. I'm sure you're familiar with those. And so we've developed these partnerships with people in robotics and so on. And then we come in as the kind of day-to-day commercial operation, and we work with those companies. And there's been a fair amount of success. So I think it's just one approach, teaming with other companies, startups, and so on. But I think we've done it rather successfully.
That's great. Any experiences for you, Sarah, or companies you've been involved with?
I have. I would say that the incubation example is probably the best. There was an acquisition that I was involved with that was very creative and had a lot of products that we did not want to slow that down. I would say the hard part is then from the leadership team, the cultural aspects
Mhm.
of that. And I can't say that it was totally successful just because, the mothership was much larger.
Mhm.
And it's hard to navigate things like, why aren't they under the same types of, rules or, procedures that everybody else is. But they continued to be creative.
Yeah.
It just wasn't always good or wasn't great from the integration standpoint.
Mm.
So I have not successfully done it. But I think, you have to keep trying
You
different
have to keep
things.
trying.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to keep trying.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk a little more personal, your career journeys, and how that Kellogg education helped you. So why don't I start with, tell me how you got into the manufacturing sector altogether. You had choices.
For me, it was a complete accident. So it was not something that I said, I want to go do manufacturing. For me, it was, moving to another location and looking for a job. And it just happened to be, an electric motor company, coming from Dr. Pepper. So
Oh, wow.
a marketing
Very
company
different. Very different.
going to electric motors. You said it earlier, not sexy. And that's so true. But I have thoroughly enjoyed the industrial side. It's pretty much been my career. And the way I think about it is, just the differences between being in a marketing-based company versus industrial company is you need problem solvers.
Mhm.
And there's so many different tools and ways and people that can help from a problem solving aspect. So it's very collaborative, whether, regardless of what you're manufacturing. So for me, it was an accident, but it was a good accident.
Mhm.
Sunita, for you?
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, just like Sarah, I don't think I planned it necessarily, but I came to Kellogg a little bit later. So I was already working for 7 years. Believe it or not, right after college, I started an online game company, did that couple years, sold it, and worked in a few software companies. So I think I had a little bit of like some kind of guiding principles with regard to what I wanted to do next or what I didn't want to do. I was not interested in consulting or banking, which was kind of like the usual route for MBAs during my time. But I wanted to work, I would say, in two areas. One is I found that I really love that intersection of new technology, some kind of innovation, new business, that. And then also I kind of wanted, whatever work I was doing, whichever industry I went into had that additionality factor, meaning like whatever you're selling actually has some positive impact, be it to the environment or to society. And for me, the choices were between healthcare and energy. And then I just happened to go into energy. And I would say that was really the start of my industrial career. So energy infrastructure, industrial, but more of an energy infrastructure perspective.
It's great. Scott?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I would say I would use the accidental term as well. I was in the electronics industry. And one thing I loved about the company I was with is we were making components, electronic components, and we were selling to, the automotive industry and the computer industry and the medical industry for their electronic equipment at the time. And of course, that industry is much bigger now than it was then. And I had an opportunity. I found the component business to be very transactional, price delivery and so on. I wanted something more strategic where I could really exercise all my muscles. And so I had an opportunity and I got into automation and I got hooked. I mean, I love seeing how things are made and the variety of going through an automotive plant and talking to them one day, and then a food and beverage plant, and then a wastewater treatment plant, and renewable energy, and all the things we've talked about, and a lot of industries that you wouldn't even think of. I mean, almost everyone, chicken farms,
Mhm.
are implementing some level of automation, data collection, and so on. So I found that variety to be so intellectually stimulating, along with some of the other things I talked about. And I got hooked, and it's been, as you said, over 30 years.
That's fantastic. Great examples. I'm sure Kellogg helped you along the way. I mean, obviously, your intellectual curiosity is something you all come with. But as you reflect on your career so far, I mean, how did Kellogg help you become a better leader in this, industrial manufacturing space?
Mhm.
Oh gosh, I could go a lot of different directions. I guess I'll go back to the problem solving aspect, because there's so many tools that you pick up at Kellogg that I recall back, just as we're going through different things. And I know that it's not always thought of by my peers or coworkers at the time. So it's introducing different thoughts to the conversation that has been critical to, get the voice and, have the success that I've enjoyed. So I would say it's multifaceted from just the holistic view of
Yep.
the Kellogg experience.
Mhm. Yeah,
Anything to add?
I would add to that, definitely. I think it helped me to develop a certain mindset. And specifically, perhaps I can share two things. I think Kellogg really taught me about the importance of appreciating diversity of thoughts. I think in the beginning wasn't very clear to me, but now, and when I think about diversity of thoughts, doesn't necessarily mean just gender or race, but more like people from different backgrounds, different industries, different experiences. And especially in my line of work that requires a lot of innovation and creativity, that, having that diversity of thought in the room actually really helps. And then the second, I took so many leadership classes at Kellogg, but I think the one connecting thread that really resonated with me is like, at the end of the day, sure, you start your career as a positional leader, but as you continue to grow, I'm sure you guys would agree, we have to develop others as leaders, because when your team members, when there are more leaders in the organization, I think the performance go up, which will be better for business.
Absolutely. You guys put that so well. I mean, I don't know that I can add much other than, problem solving.
Yes.
I love the case studies,
Mm.
and you talk about problem solving and the teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kellogg is known for
Mm-hmm.
camaraderie and teamwork
Mm-hmm.
more than any other school. And I think that really resonated for me at the time. And I find that you talk about what you take from your education and so on. You don't really think about, okay, on a day-to-day basis, oh yeah, I learned that,
Yes.
20 years ago in Kellogg. You don't do that, but it's there, the foundational element. Because really, business, and maybe particularly in the industrial world, is a case study every day, maybe
Mhm.
5 case studies in a day. People bring you things. You have to get the facts to your point, do the discovery, et cetera. And I just find it, again, intellectually stimulating. It's great.
Super. I have one other with regard to choosing careers. I've got to get here because I've spent my entire career in industrial companies, and I think our audience is predominantly folks who have an interest in this. And then when you think about MBA students, and most of our audience today are alumni from Kellogg, how would we think about a message to MBA students today related to pursuing a career in industrial manufacturing kind of businesses? What would you say should be our message?
Try it, you'll like it. No.
You're a good salesperson.
No, I think as I mentioned before, I find it the strategic elements of dealing with institutional buyers to be, as opposed to the consumer, which is kind of a monolithic thing. I find each institutional buyer is different, with different challenges, different competition, et cetera. I find that incredibly stimulating intellectually and so on. And for me, I've really enjoyed, and again, I'm in the automation field, and I get to see all these industries, Sarah's industry, Sunita's industry, and so on, and what they're doing. And so, and I guess it's a little pitch for automation, but I think industrial in general is just a fascinating field.
Right.
Because in manufacturing, you're making products that consumers are going to ultimately benefit from, society is going to benefit from, and the quality is important. And when you see how things are made in automated factories, it is absolutely mind-blowing. I could give you some websites, but it is pretty incredible.
Thank you, Scott. That's very helpful.
I think they have to think about it just as an open field, because I've been in several industrial companies, and just the different end markets, as you've mentioned, that kind of goes through the whole process. So every function has a place to thrive. I mean, there are challenges in all facets of it, you know, from the front end to the manufacturing to the back end and the quality. And there's just, it's an open playing field. And so I think if you have an interest in trying many things, that's a great place. Manufacturing industrials are a great place to go. And then maybe you find something that's more niche-y that you know can go to. But I think it just gives you a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I think for me, I view, and of course, this is only clear afterwards, looking backwards instead of when you were starting out. I view industrial, both manufacturing, energy, and all the kind of heavy industrial industry is really as foundational industry that really, it's foundational industry that make, you know, our day-to-day possible, right? So for me, I actually found the intersection of what I love, which is, you know, technology, innovation, and my skills. I'm pretty good at starting new things, you know, at, I guess, industrial legacy companies, but also having that impact, you know, that intersection actually is provided to me by working in the industrial business.
What I heard you all say, I know I'm trying to lead the witness here a little bit, but general management skills, right? So you're dealing with innovation, you're dealing with channels, you're dealing with marketing, you're dealing with manufacturing, you're dealing with a very broad array of skills that are needed, and essentially makes anybody in this industry a general manager. So I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but if people have aspirations to be a general manager, not just a specialist, and many people come to MBA schools to start to become more of a general manager, this is a great place, like you said, to give it a try. You might like it and stay, right?
Absolutely. And most people do. Most people do.
Yeah. You know, this has been a fascinating conversation. First off, thank you to all three of you for making time to share your personal knowledge, your personal experiences and wisdom and everything that you've learned through years of spending time in the manufacturing industrial economy. It's a very important economy for the country. There's a lot of investment happening here. And I think given where Kellogg sits, the location being Chicago in the Midwest, there's so much happening in this area that's leading you know, the manufacturing and industrial economy. And Kellogg is really positioned very well to continue to, you know, build the next generation of leaders for this industry. And I'm thrilled we had so many people who joined us. Thank you for your interest in this space. And we are all together in this community to help build the next generation of leaders for industrial and manufacturing sector. Thank you for joining us today, and have a good day.